afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you today. And my name is Moazli Mayam. I am the very proud Lynn Pippinger Dean of the best College of Business in the country, the MUMA College of Business at the University of South Florida. And let me tell you, I'm just thrilled to be with you today. And we are at our, believe it or not, fifth virtual conversation with the CEO. And I really, really hope this will be the last one. However, we have an incredible leader today to be with us. And let me tell you, people ask always when I travel, what is so good about this country? And yes, it is the land of dreams and opportunities. But what makes our country really true are all these for nonprofit organizations, all these volunteers and all these wonderful leaders. Their only mission and passion is to do good for the community and to help others who need help. So today, we have an incredible leader who is exactly that, an incredible member of our community, very successful leader, just one of the best in the nonprofit industry, the one and only Mike Sutton. Mike, thank you so much for being with us. So Mike is the CEO of the Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas and West Pasco counties. Listen to this. This is number 2 among all affiliates of the Habitat for Humanity. And Mike is one of these just great people, well-rounded, very successful, but also very passionate about helping others and also doing good for the community and doing good for others. And he's been the CEO now, I think, for almost 7 years. And guess what? Brought it to be number 2. And of course, the biggest factor in Mike's success, you probably know what it is. Yes, he's a USF alum. And we're talking about to Mike, and he alternated between 2 majors, criminology and business. Not that they are very related, but he graduated, and now he's an inspiration to all of us. So thank you so much, Mike, for being with us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Dean, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for that intro. I feel like I'm going to have to make a donation to the School of Business now.
Yeah, that will go after that, and I'm sure backstage the development team will be talking with you.
There you go.
Mike. So it's good. Let me start, Mike, with really an interesting story, because as we were talking, I think the reasons I love what I do, because we are in the business of changing lives of our students one at a time. And, you are in a very similar business and industry. And let me tell you something you probably don't know, Mike, and our wonderful listeners here don't know. The USF most outstanding graduate for the last graduation ceremony, spring, is a MUMA alum. And she lived in a house that is built by Habitat for Humanity. Oh. And if it weren't for Habitat for Humanity, probably wouldn't be even where she is now. And as we speak, she is traveling to DC to have a job in cybersecurity at KPMG.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome.
That's really good. And that's the difference you and your wonderful organization is doing. So it is a pleasure to have you today with us, Mike. And let's start with, tell us a little bit your background. Where did you grow up, and who were your mentors and your inspirations? And
sure.
So you want to share with us?
I grew up actually in Tampa. We moved to Tampa when I was a small kid, and Grew up in what was considered North Tampa at the time. It's probably more Central Tampa as the city has expanded, but grew up in North Tampa, went to Gaither High School. My parents split and got divorced as I was entering college. So it kind of forced me to stay local, which ended up being a blessing because I think my experience at USF, and I'm not just saying this because we're talking today, but my experience at USF was phenomenal. And I learned so much now I was there 5.5 years. I did a couple victory laps, but the university didn't complain about that because I was paying tuition. But the time at USF for me was just such an amazing time. Learned a lot. I joke that, my GPA may not have been that strong, but my social GPA was about a 4.0. So I definitely got all that college had to offer during my time there. Really, probably what I'm most proud of in my, not just in life, but in my career, it's the fact that I'm a first-time college grad. My mother is probably the most inspirational person in my life, and made sure that I had everything I needed to go off to college, although it was just a few miles down the road, and made sure that I had the time and the commitment to get through college. So it was just a phenomenal experience.
I'm so happy that USF played a role in that, Mike. This is really true. I just want to also remind all our listeners that you can tweet your questions at USF CEO Convo. So please keep your questions, and we will alternate. I promise we will take your questions. And Mike was so good. He said any questions is fine. He might regret it later on.
Nothing's off the table. Right?
Good. Mike, we are now, there is no doubt, we're in very difficult times, all of us, struggling with this pandemic that initially we thought it would be short-lived. And now we have variant, and the number of cases are increasing. The number of hospitalizations are increasing. It is tough. It is tough on universities. It is tough for businesses. It is tough for organizations like yours. But yet, you had an incredible year.
Yeah.
So would love to just jump into it. And what can you share with our participants here, our friends, about your secrets? What have you learned?
It's definitely a crazy time we're living in. I don't think any of us ever would have anticipated living through a pandemic like we are. I think when the pandemic first hit, I'm extremely proud of the team we have at Habitat, because we immediately said, okay, this is something that is going to have a lasting effect on our organization, and we need to start addressing this immediately. So when the shutdown happened, our team really pulled together, and we were actually doing daily meetings. And I'm not someone that enjoys having meeting after meeting just to have meetings, but it was important for us to have that FaceTime with each other, even if it was virtual, and to just talk about what was going on in the organization, what was going on with our staff, and what morale was like, because people were obviously having to shelter in place. So that change and that shift in just life in general was something that we talked about and we communicated about on a frequent basis. And what that ended up doing for us, that daily meeting over the course of a couple months, was building so much trust and collaboration amongst our leadership, that our organization continued to move forward and continued to serve families. And the other component of that was when as soon as we were able to, we started to reintroduce staff back into the office and bringing people back. I see a lot of other nonprofits in the community that still have not gone back to the office. And here we are 18 or 20 months later. We've been back in the office since June of last year. And really, I think that's what kind of led to us continuing to advance our mission, continuing to serve more families, and having a record year. So 2020 was a record year for us. We built 60 homes in our community. We raised over $24 million in revenue. And we're on track in 2021 to exceed all that. And again, so I think it all comes back to, we have an amazing community that supports our mission. We have an amazing staff at Habitat. I can't say enough good things about them. You and I were joking before we got on here live that, really it's our staffs that make the organizations move. And we have a team that just does a phenomenal job carrying out our mission. And we made our goal through the pandemic was clear. It was, how do we continue to serve families and carry out our mission? And we were able to do that. So really, really proud of the team.
That's great, Mike. I totally agree. And just so that all our friends listening today are aware of Habitat for Humanity, give us a little bit of background about the mission. What do you do? How do you do it? So that everybody understand the incredible things that you do with your team.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been at the organization for 7.5 years. I've been with Habitat over 12, though, because I did work for 5 years in Texas with a Habitat affiliate. There's not a day that goes by that I don't enjoy my job. So I think that's a big driving piece to the success we've had. We've really tried to make Habitat a place where our employees enjoy coming to, and they feel comfortable working there. The organization as a whole started in the 70s as a way to basically promote and advocate and build affordable housing throughout our community. So Habitat, you fast forward to today, we're in 70 plus countries around the world. There are 1,200 Habitat affiliates in the United States, and those 1,200 affiliates are all independently incorporated. So we all have our own board of directors and our own mission on a local level. And out of those 1,200 affiliates, you touched on it earlier, we're the second largest in the country based on new home construction. And so the idea behind Habitat is we partner with low income, moderate income families that would not normally be able to acquire affordable housing. So they probably make too much money to receive any sort of government assistance, but they don't make enough money. I'm sorry. They don't make enough money in order to get a traditional home loan. And so they're kind of stuck in this weird spot where they're paying an exorbitant amount of their monthly income towards rent. Maybe they're living in a dilapidated housing situation or structure, unresponsive landlord. And so Habitat is able to provide them with a zero interest mortgage. And that zero interest mortgage is what makes or breaks that affordability for them for the long term. So the families that partner with us, they have to be willing to partner with us. So they put in 350 to 450 sweat equity hours helping to build homes, as well as building their own home. And then they go through a series of 25 home buyer education classes. And the importance of education. So the education component that our homeowners go through is really what leads to their ultimate success. And you touched on the student who grew up in a Habitat home. That's a success story. But what we hear so much of is the life-changing trajectory that we see these families go on once they're into a home. It creates stability in their family. It creates stability with the students. They're no longer jumping from school to school. They're now able to kind of hunker down and build long-term friendships and do much better in school. And for the families, they're creating intergenerational wealth through home ownership. So every mortgage payment that they're making is going towards, paying down that mortgage. And so for the very first time in their life, they have some sort of asset that they can call theirs.
That's incredible, Mike. And you mentioned how you require families to actually be partners and spend hours building and cleaning with you. When I was doing some research in preparations, and I have my own sources, I discovered two interesting facts about Mike Sutton. First, he absolutely loves Hooters wings. So that's one thing. But the second thing that is also very unique, actually, you don't just talk the talk, but you walk the walk. And you like cleaning on sites and sweeping and doing things. So
I do.
Yeah. So kudos to you. That's really good. Let's go back a little bit, Mike, to 7 years ago when you took the leadership of um, Habitat for Humanity in Pinellas and West Pasco. Always, I think one of the most difficult period and sensitive period for any leaders is when he or she starts the job, a leadership job. So tell us a little bit, how did you decide on your goals? How did the first 2-3 months for you, and how did you make sure that you are always on target and following your goals? Just really interesting.
Yeah. So the process, first off, I never thought I would be a CEO of a nonprofit. I kind of stumbled into the nonprofit sector. And one of the things I was so excited about us talking was, I do think, especially for students who are watching, there is this path to the nonprofit world that that so many people skip over, because there's the misconceptions that you can't make a good living. You work long hours and are not rewarded for that. But the nonprofit path is one that I chose, again, by accident, but it's been a blessing in so many ways. When I was approached about the position at Habitat, someone who I consider a really strong mentor of mine, Nancy Ridenauer, was the person who kind of brought the idea to me to apply for this role. It was a 9-month process to become CEO. So the interview after interview, meeting with board members, doing presentations, it was a pretty long process. When I was finally hired, I found pretty quickly when I started, I was not the choice by the staff. That there was an internal candidate who that the staff wanted, and I think because he was a known quantity, people knew what to expect, and so I wasn't necessarily greeted with open arms by everyone. So, which was a challenge in itself, right? So, but the board hired me kind of for 2 reasons. One, I had a fundraising background, and they knew that the organization could only grow if we did more in terms of raising funds and raising awareness out in the community. So that was kind of the big part of it. I think the other piece that the board wanted to do was to build some sustainability. So we were in a place as an organization that possibly, we were going from basically paycheck to paycheck, making payroll, and we did not have the sustainability built up of the organization. And so times have changed. I think what we learned after the market crash in 2008 was that nonprofits need to have the sustainability and cash in the bank to sustain, things that happen, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a change in leadership or what have you. And so the board was clear. They wanted to raise more money and they wanted to build for a sustainable future, all with the idea that we were going to serve more families. And so, when I was hired on, we kind of sat down as an organization. We said, how are we going to do that? Well, we didn't have a strategic plan in place. So that was the first thing. There was no roadmap in terms of success for us. So we pulled together members of our board and members of our staff to build out a strategic plan that would be used as kind of our guide to get from point A to point B. And I'm really, when I look back on where we were when I started, we were a $5 million organization building 20 homes a year. And you fast forward to a place where we're now over $24 million in revenue, building over 60 homes a year. We were able to do some pretty amazing things over the last 7 years to put all that in motion. And so there's a couple folks that are still with us from when I started. Ken and Gabby, who are on my exec team, are 2 of our very strong leaders that kind of stuck it out and said, hey, we want to be a part of this. We want to grow. So it was part of it was telling the staff, look, we're going to take off here. You can either be on the train or not, but don't be standing on the tracks when we're coming through, because we're going to move fast and we're going to serve more families.
That's amazing. That's 300% growth in number of houses, Mike, and that's incredible. I'm
going to put that on my resume.
Yeah, that's good. You should. you and I are successful because of the community and the support of the community, right? And talking about the community, you and I have a common, very dear personal friend who's with us today,
Yeah.
very, very attentively listening to us and probably smiling. Do you know who's that person, Mike?
Yeah, and it's his birthday.
Oh, it's
So
his birthday.
it's his
And who's that
birthday, but
person, Mike?
Mr. Jeff Fishman for sure. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
He's
So, Jeff, thank you for being with us, and very
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
happy birthday, Jeffrey.
too funny. That's awesome. Jeff's a great
We've
guy.
never
And
done this.
obviously, he's
Yeah.
an amazing USF supporter. He's an amazing
Absolutely.
Habitat supporter. He was a big reason that kind of brought us together. So
Absolutely,
he's
absolutely.
he's a great friend. So I'm glad we can embarrass him a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. He will remember that hopefully. Very good. So, Mike, yeah, the word of nonprofit is very different from corporate
Yeah.
America, and it has a great perks and advantages, but also have challenges.
Yeah.
So just share with us a little bit for many of our students here, or even alums and friends who are tempted about a career or switch their career to nonprofit, but they don't know much. What can you share with them? The good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's obviously those stigmas, right,
Yeah,
associated with working in the nonprofit sector. Maybe you won't make a good living. You'll be living, in poverty, that kind of thing. I think that's something that when I think back to probably first getting into college and I was working for the YMCA a little bit in college. I think that was one of the conversations I had with my mother a couple times. I think she had the idea that maybe in the nonprofit sector you wouldn't make as much of a living as you would in the for-profit world. There's a gentleman by the name of Dan Pallotta who wrote a book called Uncharitable, and it talks specifically around the overhead myth. And I'm a firm believer that we run Habitat in this way, and the board gives me a lot of flexibility to do this, that we invest in our people and we invest in the infrastructure of the organization. There's this extremely high expectation on nonprofits to go out and change the world and make this massive impact and to do things with a shoestring budget, or maybe in some ways with no budget, right? But we have to find a way to invest in our infrastructure, in the way that we do things as an organization. We have to invest in our talent, and that's a big piece of what we do at Habitat. We want to attract the best people to work at Habitat and to carry out our mission. Well, we can't do that if we're not willing to compete with the for-profit sector. So yeah, you may not make as much money as you would maybe down the street at a Fortune 500 company. But one of the things I'm proud of at Habitat is we find ways to retain and to recruit staff that are talented, that are going to take Habitat to the next level. I think that's a big piece of the nonprofit sector. So for anyone who's looking to go into the nonprofit field, or even giving it consideration, or maybe even changing career paths, I think that you want to find an organization that lines up with that belief that they have to invest in their team. They have to invest in their community and their software and that's something else that we're about to roll out a pretty large investment in a software that's basically a 360-degree view on our organization. Our CFO is taking the lead on that and doing a phenomenal job to make sure that our staff is well equipped. And that leads to efficiencies and the effectiveness of the organization to do that much more. Finding organizations that are willing to make that kind of investment can sometimes be a challenge.
That's a good point, Mike. As our wonderful friend and donor Les Muma, he always says, find a job you're very passionate about, and you will never work one day in your life.
Very, very true.
Yes, if nonprofit find the organization that aligns with your values and your passion, and you will never work one day in your life. So that's a great. Let's go ahead, Ashley, and take a question from Twitter from the audience, please. All right. So one of our also distinguished alum, Brent Hoven, he's saying, do you think the affordable housing crisis will naturally abate or continue to worsen in the near to medium term? Great question, Brent. And the reasons Brent is asking great questions because he's also a USF MUMA alum.
There you go. Well, Brent, thank you for that question. And I think when you look at the affordable housing crisis that we're experiencing, it's not just here in the Tampa Bay region. It's not just here in the state of Florida. It's all throughout the country. My personal belief on it is I do think you'll see some relief in certain areas of the country. However, the record number of people that are moving to Florida on any given day is creating this crisis that we're seeing, and I feel like it's only going to continue to get worse. I think when you look at different parts of the community or the country, whether it's California, whether it's New York or the New England states, it's so much cheaper to move to Florida still. We're obviously attractive because we have no state income tax, although we do have higher property taxes. I think Florida is a place that people are looking to move to. I also think that people have seen what's happened in the pandemic, where the state of Florida has, for the most part, remained open, and that the economy has done relatively well. And I think that that's also attractive to people move here. I think what we see at Habitat, the folks that we serve and the people that we continue to partner with are being priced out of their communities. So if we're going to continue to be a community that relies so much on tourism and the tourism employment base, we have to find ways for people to have affordable homes and affordable places to live. And Habitat's just one piece of that puzzle. I think it comes down to private and public partnerships to drive that conversation. We've done enough talking about it, in my opinion. There's especially at the government level, everyone's aware there's an affordable housing crisis. I think it's now time that we all have to step up and do something about it. Again, I'm proud that Habitat is leading the charge from an affordable home ownership standpoint. We specialize in single family home development. We're leading the charge in that, and we'll continue to do that. We're starting to scratch the surface a little bit on multifamily homes, things like townhomes and condos. We do not get into the rental business. That's just not part of what we do. But there's other great organizations that are doing that. We have to continue to find incentives for developers to look at affordable housing as an important piece. Otherwise, we're going to continue to price people out of the market and not be able to be an affordable place to live.
Thank you, Mike. This is really one of the best analysis about affordable housing that I've heard in a long time. And thank you. I don't know if you know, but we, the MUMA Casual Business, is partnering with the Tampa Bay Partnership to study and benchmark the competitiveness of our region compared to 19 other regions, the Austin, the Atlanta, and the Miami of the world. And what we are finding is, unfortunately, in Tampa Bay, we are always lagging behind in poverty. And one of the most effective and efficient way to move the needle is through affordable housing. So that you're a big part of the solution to one of our biggest problems. So thank you, Mike, for that.
Thanks.
To be able to move the needle, since we're talking about moving the needle, the way you have in just 7 years and a half, from 20 to 60 houses, that's incredible. I believe, and you and I talk, partnerships and relationships and are key, not just for nonprofit, for anything we do. I always call it the big R for relationship, for P for partnerships. It can be a little bit challenging for nonprofits, especially that you have to, many instances, partner with for-profit organizations. So
Mhm.
so tell us a little bit about your view on partnerships in general and the importance of it and how you approach it, but also how are you successful, and you've been very successful in partnering with for-profit.
Yeah, I think Habitat would not be successful if it was not for partnerships, and partnerships all over the board. So it takes partnerships with the municipalities in which we build in, that they want to work with Habitat and want to be partners in finding affordable housing solutions. The corporate industry is a very big part of making Habitat successful and continuing to move the mission. You mentioned Hooters Wings earlier.
Yes.
Hooters, which was founded here in the Tampa Bay region, is a good example of a corporate partner of ours that, they got involved with us. They built a house, they sponsored the home, they brought their employees out to swing a hammer,
Great.
and they've now done 5 homes with us. And we've also built homes in partnership with employees that work for their organization. And a lot of that happens over because of relationships, right? And Ed Drosty, who's one of the founders, I have to mention him because he's been a mentor of mine. He's basically a father figure to me, and as someone who's helped kind of guide me in my career. Him and I talk a lot about partnerships and how if you can connect people with something that they are passionate about, it leads to such amazing success for both sides. So for us at Habitat, what we try to do is we try to bring to the table for a corporate partner, for a municipality, for a foundation, an individual, whomever's partnering with us, we like to bring to the table what we can offer them. And that is an opportunity to change the trajectory of a family's life forever. Everyone wins when we get somebody into a Habitat home, because now they're paying taxes, they're paying property taxes on that property, they're increasing the home values around them, they're bettering the community, and they're putting down roots in our community, and they'll be here forever, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
on the flip side, the flip side, what they get is the benefit of engaging their employees or their workforce or their customers in the work that we do. We do a lot of work with Crown Automotive, who has 20 plus dealerships in our region. One of the unique things that they did a couple years ago when they were building a house with us is they reached out to all their customers. So anyone who has their car serviced at Crown, they invited them to come out and swing a hammer with them. So there's no better way to engage your customers than to do something to benefit the community. And it also shows that they're a valuable community member. They're not just here to make $1 off of you when you get your oil change or when you buy a new car. They're actually here putting some sweat equity into the community in which they are benefiting from.
That's what a great lesson Mike is. And for all our wonderful friends listening today, please remember, partnerships, relationships is the foundation of everything we do for the profit, non-profit world. And I cannot agree with you more, Mike. Let's go back a little bit. Oh, there is a question here.
There's a question.
Yes, from Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce that you chaired, I think, a few years ago, or maybe you're still there.
I chaired the Amplify Clearwater, which was the Clearwater Regional Chamber.
Okay.
But Robin, who's the CEO of the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber, is a good friend, and we're a member of that chamber, and they do great work in our community.
So the question from there, is there any plan to venture to partnerships with the tourism industry, hotels, to develop multi-family? That's a good question.
That's a good question, and definitely something that we're starting to see in other areas of the country. There's a number of Habitat affiliates and that have ventured into partnering with folks that own maybe a smaller motel, hotel type establishment to then turn that into affordable home ownership. So although we may not have plans on the horizon, I think the way that we operate as an organization is we never cross anything off. There's always opportunities to look at things differently. And if we can find the funding to do something and it meets our mission of putting people in an affordable housing solution, then we'll definitely look at it as an option.
That's great. So if we go back again to the amazing performance that you and your team had over a relatively short period of time, 7 years and a half. That's not too long to increase the performance threefold, not 30%, threefold.
Mhm.
If I'm sure everyone here is like, how did you do it? If you have to identify one or two factors that led to the success that our listeners today, Mike, can learn from, what would that be?
We've talked about some of this already, Dean. I mean, it's the relationships and the partnerships, and the relationships within the community, and surrounding yourself with people who are going to support the work that you're doing is so key. Relationships with our staff. We've built a phenomenal team, and I can't take credit for that, even though I'm in the position that I am. It's been a team effort to make sure we have the right people around the table. There's not a single person at the Habitat organization now, and this hasn't always been the case, but right now, I don't believe there's anyone in our organization that's not there for the overarching goal of serving families in our community. And I think when you can get 70 people all on the same page and all moving in the same direction and rowing the boat in the same direction, great things happen. And so the relationships in the community, so that external component, the relationships internally, so that internal component, are key to what we've been able to do over the last 7.5 years. And then those partnerships, finding folks who are not necessarily just looking to do something to stroke a check, or maybe for the media PR behind it, but are truly looking at how do we mutually benefit here? How is this a partnership that's going to maybe raise the profile of our organization or our company, and at the same time, it's going to do something in the community to change a life forever?
That's really good, Mike. So let's talk a little bit now about one of the incredible acknowledgement and accomplishment that you had. You have been selected as one of the by Tampa Bay Business Journal, one of the Power 100 leaders in the Tampa Bay very recently in January.
Yeah.
Just tell us. I know you're really modest, but I've seen the list, and it's just very impressive list. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to your team and to your organization?
Yeah, so I think when the list first came out, I thought, well, gosh, there must be a misspelling. They picked the wrong Mike, or maybe they ran out of names after '99, and
Nah, that's
and
not the case.
they slid me in. But honestly, it's a huge accomplishment, and for some of the folks on the list, maybe it's not. They're they own a sports team or what have you, and but for me, it was huge validation that the work that we're doing in the community. And the impact that Habitat is having is being seen and being heard. And in a lot of ways, I feel like we've just scratched the surface. I've been in this role for 7.5 years. I just signed a 6-year contract extension with the organization, so I do plan to stick around for a while. And I think sky's the limit in terms of what we can do. So when the outside community starts to recognize the work we're doing, and Ian and Alexis do amazing work at the Tampa Bay Business Journal, for them to recognize me on that list was very humbling on a personal level, but on a professional level, I think it definitely it just validates the work that we are doing as an organization.
That's good. Thank you, Mike. As soon as you said contract extension for 6 years, my fundraising team took note of that, and they will be contacting you right after this.
That doesn't mean I'm making more money here. Wait a
minute. I've been counting. You said the word teams 18 times.
Okay.
In a very relatively, which is great. That's how I really assess leaders. And you and I talked, and you're only as good as the team around you and the team you surround yourself with. It sounds like a cliche, but it is so true.
Yeah.
One mentor of mine says, always surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. I know for me that's very easy, because not that smart, so it's easy
Mhm.
for me to find people
I'm-
that smarter
I'm-
than you. So, Mike, what do you look for your team, especially your direct reports, the executives that really will
yeah.
help you carry on that wonderful mission of yours?
Resumes are only so much, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen some pretty amazing resumes that have come across my desk for various positions. Um, but I think at the end of the day, they have to, the person has to fit the culture of the organization. We've spent 7.5 years building that culture at Habitat. And that's key when you're bringing someone new in. You don't want a disruption, right? Some
Yeah.
disruption's good, but you don't want the negativity or someone that's going to be kind of a cancer to the organization. And we've had that. I've made more bad hires in my career than I have good. I think that's probably the norm for anyone who is hiring, a good amount of people throughout their career. And that's okay. But I think doing the due diligence around who we're going to hire. We just hired for an executive level position at Habitat that it took us probably about 4 to 5 months to get to the finish line. And I'm okay slowing that process down and making sure we're making the right hire and someone that's going to fit in with the organization, that's going to collaborate with their peers. And also manage up and manage down in the organization. So if someone's willing to roll up their sleeves and jump in with Habitat and they fit the culture, sometimes that's more important than maybe what their background is with their education or where they're coming from or what their work history looks like in our world anyway.
That's a great point, Mike. And I'm glad you're taking your time to hire. A really good friend of mine always says, hire slowly,
Mhm.
fire quickly.
Exactly.
And I think that's really a good advice. I think it was in 2019 or so, you merged with another affiliate.
Yeah.
People, when they think about mergers, they think about for profit, right? But
Yeah.
Eve is non-profit. But I believe it's always a challenge to merge two organizations, two different cultures. What have you learned through that merger, and what kind of advice you give to our audience when they are merging two organizations?
Great question, Dean. And in 2019 we went through this consolidation process of taking on a smaller Habitat affiliate that was serving the western side of Pasco County. I think for us it was a pretty easy process because we had an organization where the leader was leaving in Pasco County, and they wanted to serve more families. They saw what we were able to do in Pinellas County. We have a pretty strong leadership team. And so there was an ability to just bring the two organizations together in a relatively short amount of time. And so we went from a place where they literally were building one home a year, and to a place where we're now building about 12 homes a year in Pasco County.
Wow.
And that's just going to continue to increase as we build our brand in that community. I think when you look at an organization like Habitat, something that excites me and that needs to happen is regional consolidation. We live in a community in the Tampa Bay region where there's about 10 Habitat affiliates, which creates brand confusion, market confusion, donor confusion to the extreme, right?
Yes,
And so I think for us to have a deeper impact and to serve more families, there needs to be a regional approach. And we've seen that happen with a number of larger organizations in our community. The United Way sticks out. Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is where I
right.
spent time before Habitat, went through the consolidation or the merger conversations. So I do think that that's something that Habitat as an organization will have to look at over time, and hopefully something that we'll continue to talk about as a way to serve more families in our community.
Absolutely, Mike. Let's I think this is really good. The measure of Habitat. This is the measure we're talking about it in 2019. Actually, let's take a question from Twitter.
Well, looks like there's one right there about the merger, huh?
Yeah. Oh yes. So
And
do
it's
you,
and specific about Hillsborough County. Ouch, man!
yes.
Talk about putting me on the spot. Well, I can't speak for the Habitat affiliate in Hillsborough County, but what I can say is that when there's two organizations that are willing to have the conversation, I will tell you, our board of directors and our staff is willing to sit down and talk about it. Hillsborough County has resources that from a land and a corporate partnership standpoint that maybe we may not in Pinellas and Pasco. And on the flip side, we've built a pretty robust organization with a lot of efficiencies, on the Pinellas side. So, one day, I would hope to see a regionalized Habitat affiliate, but I can only speak for myself and our affiliate that we would like to see that at some point one day. And based on my phone getting a lot of text messages, I'm going to cut that conversation right there, Dean.
Okay, no problem. And we'll make sure to cut this segment and put it on Facebook so everybody. All right, another great question. What advice would you give, Mike, to mid-level managers who are looking to change careers and are possibly looking at nonprofit? Great question.
I think probably one of the best things to do for folks that are looking to make that change into the nonprofit sector is find organizations you're passionate about. There are some missions out there that you may not resonate with, or maybe a little bit too much emotionally. I've always had a lot of respect for the folks that work in the domestic violence world and run organizations that have shelters and that kind of thing, because they're dealing with some pretty intense situations. So I think making sure that you do the research and your homework around an organization. And then find ways to get involved with them. We have a number of folks that are members of our staff because they got involved with us on a volunteer standpoint. Our chief construction officer, Gabby Camacho, has been with us for about 12 years. She started as a volunteer. She was swinging a hammer with us. She was an architect and wanted to get out and kind of put some of that work to practice. And she has been someone that over 12 years has been promoted probably 4 times in our organization and is now one of our executives. And I'm proud of the work that Gabby's done to get to that place. But I think that's an important piece, is finding the organization that you feel most passionate about, and find a way to get connected in with them. And also, I think this isn't just for changing into the nonprofit sector, but I just think as a whole, advancing your career is all about surrounding yourself with people who are going to lift you up, who are going to give you advice, but also tell you the things you don't necessarily always want to hear. I went through some challenges at Habitat a number of years ago with some disgruntled staff who left the organization, and I realized real quickly that the people who I surround myself with, the people who are my mentors, folks like Ed Drosty, who I mentioned earlier, Jeff Fishman, a gentleman by the name of Bill Brand, who was the president of HSN here for a while. They're the folks that I leaned on when I was going through tough times. They were the ones that kind of gave me a reality check sometimes, were ones that held me accountable. And I think as a leader, you have to surround yourself with people who are going to do just that. And I'm really, again, I keep talking about the team that we have at Habitat, but one of the things that's so awesome about our leadership team right now is we can have those tough conversations. I have a number of folks on my team that will walk into my office, close the door, and say, "Hey, look, we need to talk." And that's the stuff that makes you stronger and makes you better, and leads to that leadership development that we all need. You never stop growing, and if you surround yourself with the right people, that's definitely the case.
That's really good. And when you surround yourself with great people, Mike, definitely they will disagree with you, and sometimes they disagree among themselves.
Oh yeah.
But as a leader, you really want to prone and facilitate some type of consensus. How do you deal with that? In your leadership team, and some people say we should go right, others say we should go left, and you probably think anywhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think it's building that consensus, right? So,
Yeah,
and that trust. I think
yeah,
people have to be able to feel that they can come to their supervisor, their CEO, their boss, with problems and ideas, and they're listened to. And I'll tell you, I'm one of, I'm guilty of that sometimes. I'm moving 100 miles an hour at times, and so sometimes when somebody comes in with an idea, it might not be the right time to even talk to me about it. But I think, that's where we as leaders are sometimes charged with slowing down and finding the appropriate time to have a conversation with a staff member. And if the idea is maybe not on par with where the organization's going, um, giving some ideas or feedback to that individual or that team to kind of go back and maybe retool a little bit is got to be key. I know there's definitely been times, and I'm sure I have staff members watching this laughing. There's probably been times where I've popped the balloon and shot down an idea really quick. But then I think some of the best ideas that we've had as an organization are the ones that we've gone back to the drawing board on. And we've finessed a little bit and we've tuned a little bit to get the best idea possible out on the table.
that's so true. I always tell my team when we're making important decisions, I get really concerned if they agree with me very quickly. I say, guys, I know
Yeah.
I'm not that smart. There's some wake up here.
You sound like me.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great question from Denise Mineo. She said, great comments. It does take leadership, a passionate team, speaking up and reaching out for partnership to move this work forward. Thank you for all you both to lead awareness and change in our community, and of course everything else. We did not pay Denise to say this. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Denise. That was great.
We appreciate you. Mike, one of the ways that always we use, and we talked about this, to try to make these difficult decisions and the strategic decisions, is to rely on facts, rely on data. At the MoMA College of Business, we are making a very strategic effort so that all our students have a strong shot in the arm in analytics, in that capacity of converting data into insights. Actually, we certify every student at MoMA as a citizen data scientist to have that mindset and the skills to do this. So tell me, especially in your business, it's just data has to be everything. Where you build, how you build, everything you do.
Yeah, I think relying on facts and statistics is so key, especially in today's world, right? I mean, look what we're seeing with the vaccine and with the pandemic, right? I mean, there's so much misinformation out there, and we don't need to get into all that. But I think when we arm ourselves with the facts and the data that back up the work we're doing, no one can argue with that. And so, one of the probably one of the largest complaints I hear at Habitat are from neighbors when we are going into a community to build a new home, because the first thing they think is that we're building a home and we're bringing in drugs and bad things and people that are not going to lift up the community. And so, we immediately counter that with, addressing their concerns with showing them the success. So we've built, our particular affiliate has built 700 plus homes in our community. We've had 6 foreclosures in our history. Well, that to me is a stat that shows the program works, and the people that move into these homes stay there. They don't lose the house. They keep the home nice. And when the home is finished, it's usually the nicest home on the block. And so we also have to kind of show the data to folks in our community around the people that are buying these homes. They're the people they're interacting with on a regular basis. I had a gentleman who was not very nice on the phone, who was, telling me he didn't want us in his community. And I was telling him the person we're building, I kind of interrupted him and said, do you have parents? And he said, yeah, I have an elderly mother who's in a nursing home. And I said, well, you trust the folks who take care of her on a daily basis? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, the woman that's going to be purchasing this home from us is in the home healthcare field. And if you trust folks like that to take care of your mom, why can't you trust her to be a neighbor? And I think, sometimes it's a matter of using common sense as much as it is stats and research.
Yeah.
But it's great to hear that you guys are doing that kind of work at MUMA and at the School of Business. And it made me also think that it's been so long since I was at USF as a student that Les and Pam had not made that donation to the School of Business yet. So it was just called the College of Business. There was no USF MUMA.
Yeah. And Mike, we started a Doctor of Business Administration for great leaders with a lot of experience. So I'm gonna drop your admission letter to the program in the chat, and you start in a couple of weeks. How's that sound? Good.
Hey, that sounds great.
One last question. We're almost out of time, Mike. Oh, see, they stole the last question from me. Tampa Bay strives to become a center for high tech. Can you discuss any innovative technology partnership strategy you're using to avoid the extreme housing pressure Raul we witnessed in San Francisco Bay? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I'm not too familiar with the San Francisco Bay Area, other than it's extremely expensive to live there. There's very little affordable housing. The Habitat affiliate out there, I know, has to subsidize the homes that they build significantly. So it may cost them $1 million to build a single family home for a family of 4. But the affordability for that homeowner may only be $250,000. So they're having to raise a lot of extra capital in order to bridge that gap and make things work. I think, as the world becomes even more tech savvy and looking at different things, I think it's going to force all of us to look at how do we do things differently. Going back to talking about that overhead myth, if we're not investing in our organization, we can't be innovative and creative in the way that we are doing things. We're starting to have conversations at Habitat about 3D printed houses and ways to make that a reality. There's obviously a lot of benefit, environmental benefit to that, as well as cost benefit. I think Habitat, we just entered into a new 3-year strategic plan. And one of the goals of that strategic plan, our former board chair was adamant that we put this in here. And he went to that institution down the road in Orlando.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
Yeah, but he was adamant that we had an innovation category of our strategic plan. And so we've created this brand new committee at Habitat that will kind of get into some of those innovations and what we can do as an organization to address things like climate change and the issues we're seeing, that are maybe preventing us from as an organization to be more creative in the way that we do things.
Thank you, Mike. Believe it or not, we're out of time. This went by so fast.
So quick.
Really cannot thank you enough for sharing all these incredible insights. And I think Hannah, and you've seen so many, and Anna here, all of them in the chat saying thank you for all you do. Christy, I don't know how much you paid these people, but they are singing your praises.
Lots of money.
Yes, but really, from all of us, Mike, thank you. We're so proud of you here at USF, and thank you for everything you do for our community, and also for giving us your time today in a very busy period of time to share your lessons learned with our great colleagues and friends and alums. So for everyone who's been with us today, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I have. Thank you for being with us. And please, mark your calendar, September 29th. We have yet another amazing conversation with the CEO. It will be with Adley Legrand. She's the CEO of Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority, and another very important organizations in our community. So again, thank you, Mike. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you, everyone. And as we always say, go Bulls, and see you very, very soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.